Hello, this is Mrs. Ward, and I am going to go over the 9.3 hyperbola, the classwork for the second half of the day, so the B section. So you had just a few problems to do. Number 21 is a special one, so I want to focus on that. Number 21 says you have x squared minus 9y squared plus 2x minus 54y minus 80 is equal to 0, and it wants us to find the standard form of the equation of the hyperbola. And so I'm going to start by putting my x's together and my y's together. Oh, let me check this before I start. X squared plus 2x minus 9y squared. And then while I'm at it, I'm going to put the 80 on the other side of the equation. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out the coefficients. Well, this has a coefficient of 1, so I really don't have to factor anything out from the x's. But I am going to just write a 1 out here in front and have x squared plus 2x. And then I'm going to have a plus sign, and then I'd like to leave my space. On the second one, I'm going to factor out a negative 9. So I'm going to write a minus 9 here. And when I factor out that negative 9, this will be y squared. And then the negative, I'm going to have to make this a plus. This sign will change. So this will be 6y here. This is always a plus sign, and I'm going to write a blank there. And this is equal to 80. Then I'm going to take half of 2. Well, half of 2 is 1. So here I'm going to write x plus 1. And then 1 squared would be just 1. And I'm adding 1 times 1. 1 times 1. So I'm adding 1 to this side, which means I'm going to add 1 over here. Doing the y part of the equation, I have this, oh, I almost forgot, there's a squared sign there. Then doing the y part of the equation, I'm going to have this minus 9, y plus sign, half of 6 is 3, 3 squared is 9, but when I look at this, I'm taking a negative 9 times 9. So I'm really adding a negative 81 to the left side, which means I'm going to subtract 81 or add a negative 81 to the right side. When I do this, this is equal to 0. When I add these all up, I get 0. When I have something like this, they're equal to 1. Well, it's not equal to 1. There's no way I can make this a 1. So what I'm going to say is this is a special case where it's a degenerate conic. And what that means is it's not going to form a hyperbola at all. It actually is 2 lines that intersect at -1, -3. You don't have to know how to get that. But if you were to graph this in your calculator, because I know some of you have figured out how to graph it in your calculator, you are going to get those 2 straight lines that intersect, and that's not at all what a hyperbola looks like. So when you're doing this, and if it happens to equal 0, it's just a degenerate conic, and that's all you can do. Once it's degenerate, that eliminates you having to do B and C, because there is no center, there is no foci, there's no vertices, and you cannot sketch it, so you're done. Moving on to the next one, number 24, we're going to start with the same procedure. What I like to, whatever variable is positive, that's the one that I leave in front. So this 9x, the x's will come in front. The y's will be next. So minus y squared plus 10y. And while I'm at it, I'm going to put the 55 over to the other side. Factoring out the 9 from the x's, I'm going to have 9 times the quantity of x squared plus 6x. Leave a space for whatever number I need to add to complete that square. From the y part of the equation, I'm going to there's no coefficient, but I'm just going to factor out this negative. So I'm going to factor out a -1 and make this y squared. And by factoring out a -1, it's just going to change the sign. So this is going to be minus 10y. Here's that plus sign, because it's always a plus sign. And then I'm going to leave my blank, and this is equal to 55. So 55. Then here, half of 6 is 3. 3 squared is 9, so a 9 will go there. 9 times 9 is 81, so I'm going to add 81 to this side. Whoopsie, this should have been a -55. My bad. Good thing I caught that. And then here I have the -1, and then half of 10 is 5. 5 squared is 25. I'm adding a -1 times 25, so really to this side I add a -25, which means to this side I'm going to add a -25. When I add that negative 55, positive 81, and negative 25, I end up with 1. Well, that's convenient. So I can't divide, well, I don't have to divide by anything because I have the 1 here already, but I have to take care of this 9. So the way I like to think of it is I need this to be a coefficient of 1 up here. So I'm going to multiply this by 1/9, which means I'm going to multiply my denominator by 1/9, which means I'm going to have x plus 3 squared over 1/9. Now that's called a complex fraction when I have a fraction within a fraction. And for conics, that's okay. I'm going to leave it like that. Y minus 5 squared over 1. And you don't have to put the 1, but I like to be consistent, so I am. So my center is going to be negative 3, positive 5. Then if I go ahead and list these, here, this would be my a squared. So a squared is equal to 1/9, which means a is equal to 1/3. Square root of 1 is 1, square root of 9 is 3. My b squared is equal to 1, which means my b is equal to 1. So while I'm here, I'm going to do my vertices. My vertices, I'm going to add this 1/3 to the x-coordinate because the x-coordinate is the one that's moving from my vertices. And when I do that, I'm either going to leave it as an improper fraction or I'm going to have a mixed number. It's up to you either way. So if I take negative 3 and I add a positive 1/3, that's negative 2 2/3, 5. Or if you don't like that, that's negative 8/3. Those are the exact same. Those are the same. Or I could subtract 1/3 and have negative 3 and 1/3, 5. And then if I left it as a mixed number or an improper fraction, that would be negative 10/3, 5. Those again are the same. That's why I have 4, because these are the same. Either one is correct. I should have been graphing while I was doing this. I don't know why I didn't think to do that. So let's go up here and sketch a little bit. Just a rough sketch. My center is negative 3, 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See. So then I'm going on the x-axis 1/3 and 1/3. So 1/3, here's a vertice, here's a vertice. And then my box up would be 1 and 1 because that's my b value. And there's my box. So my really bad box. Let's go ahead and throw some lines in here, but lines go from box to box. There's my asymptotes, and that one asymptote is really bad, so I'm going to push that little guy up there. Oopsie, not him. Him. And then when I go to graph it, since the x is positive, the branch is going to open to the left and the right. And so here's my vertex. I'm going to have here and here. So there's a sketch. And I don't think I did my foci. So my foci, I have to find my c. So c squared is equal to a squared, which is 1/9, plus b squared, which is 1. So when I add those, I get 10/9. When I take the square root, remember you can take the square root of the numerator, square root of the denominator. So e is going to equal the square root of 10 over 3. So then I'm adding that to the negative 3. So my foci is going to be negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 10 over 3. And then the y-coordinate is going to be 5. And I think I answered all my questions. I have the center, I have the vertices, I have the foci, and I have my graph. I don't know if it asks for the asymptotes or not, but I'm going to go ahead and write the equations of these asymptotes. I'm looking on my formula sheet, and it tells me for this particular one, my asymptote equation is going to be y is equal to my k, which is 5, plus or minus, in this case, it's going to be, my slope is going to be the b over a. So this is going to be 1 over 1/3. And I'm going to fix that in a second. And then x plus 3. So y is equal to, when I take the reciprocal of 1/3, I'm going to end up with 5 plus or minus 3 times the equation of x plus 3. And that's the final equation for my asymptotes. Okay, moving on to the next one. Next one, they give me some information, and they want me to write the hyperbola with the given characteristics. It doesn't ask me to sketch, but I always find it, for me, it's easier to sketch because it tells me what's going on. So I'm going to do a real rough sketch. It's not going to be neat at all. I'm just going to draw my axes. My foci are plus or minus 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Of course, I ran out of room. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's my foci. So if those are my foci, the center has to be halfway in between. So I know my center is going to be 0, 0. And because of this, I know my hyperbola has to do something like that because it opens around this foci, which tells me that the y has to be the variable that's positive. So right now, without doing anything else, I know I'm going to have y squared over a squared minus x squared, because I'm not subtracting anything from my x or y since my center is at my origin, over b squared is equal to 1. I kind of went over that fast. This center has to be 0, 0 because that's the midpoint between these 2 points here. Now, they do tell me the asymptotes, and they tell me that the slope of the asymptote, and that's all I really care about for the asymptotes, is the slope is plus or minus 4. I'm just going to use a positive 4. So in this case, if I were drawing the box to make these asymptotes, if I put a box in here, the distance from my center to the vertice would be my A, and then the second coordinate would be my B. So in this case, my slope is A over B is equal to 4. So I know. So now I'm going to look for the information that I know. So I know A over B is 4. I have nothing else. So the only other thing I know is that C, in this case, is the distance between my center and my foci. So I know my C is 8. So I can use the equation C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. So now it's kind of like I have a system of equations. We remember systems of equations in Chapter 7. I'm going to write these two. So I'm going to take this one, I'm going to put down here, and I have A over B is equal to 4. Well, I do know C is 8. So 8 squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. So 64 is equal to A squared plus B squared. I know that. This equation here, what I can do is I can multiply both sides by B to get that B out of the denominator, and I can say A is equal to 4B. Well, now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 4B, and I think I'm going to put it in for this A here and solve for B. I'm using substitution to do that. So I'm going to have A is equal to 4B, well, that A is squared, so squared plus B squared. So 64 is equal to 16b squared, because remember, I purposely wrote this in parentheses to remind me that I'm squaring both the 4 and the b, plus b squared. So 64 is equal to 17b squared. So b squared is equal to 64 over 17. I could find out what b is, but I really don't want to, and I don't have to. So I'm going to go up here, and b squared is what I'm going to substitute in here. So that's going to go right here. So right now I'm going to have minus, and this will be x squared over 64 over 17. Remember, it's a compound fraction. I'm okay with the compound fraction with conics because it actually gives me more information than I want. Now I have to find y squared. Well, I think the easiest thing to do, since I didn't take the square root of this, is I'm going to just take this b squared and put it back here, well, actually here. So let's switch colors to do that. Nice pretty colors. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say 64 is equal to a squared plus b squared, which we just said was 64 over 17. So I'm going to subtract that 64/17 from that 64, and I have a wonderful calculator that's probably going to do that for me. And when I do that, I get a squared is equal to 1024 over 17. And I'm going to put that up here for my a squared. So I'm going to have y squared is equal to 1024 over 17. Now, when you check the back of the book for the answers, if you are a person who does that, you're going to see 17y squared over 1024 minus 17x squared over 64. And that's right, but that's not the way we want you to write it. We want you to write it in this format here. So that is your final answer. Moving on to the next one, which is pretty similar. This time they give me the vertices and they give me the foci, and then they want me to write the equation. So I'm going to start by graphing what I have because I think that's a great visual to sort of help me out with the information that they're giving me, because they're giving me a lot of information here. So negative 2, 1 is a vertice. So, that's a bad graph. Negative 2, 1, and then 2, 1. So I know that my center is going to be halfway between those 2 points. So my center is going to be 0, 1. And then, so here's my center, 0, 1. And then I also know, based on this, that my A is equal to 2, because the distance from the center to my vertices is the A. My foci is negative 3, 1. So negative 3, 1. And positive 3, 1. So I know my C is equal to 3. So I know, based on this graph, that my hyperbola branches are going to open left and right, or east and west, however you want to say it. And I know that because they open in that direction, x is going to be the variable that's positive. So I'm going to have x minus 0, well, I didn't even write that, over my a squared, which in this case will be 4, minus y minus 1 squared over b squared is equal to 1. So that's the information I have just from doing the graph. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I have to find my b. So I'm going to use that formula that says c squared. So c squared is equal to a squared minus b squared. Oh, sorry, plus b squared. So I'm going to say c squared, so that'll be 9, is equal to 4 plus b squared. So b squared is equal to 5. So I am going to just write x squared over 4 minus y minus 1 squared over b squared, and b squared we just said was 5, is equal to 1. And that's all I have to do. B is the square root of 5. I could do a much better job graphing this picture. By no means is this picture accurate. It just gives me the direction of the hyperbola, and that's all I really need to know. Okay, the next one, I give you the vertices. Well, they give you the vertices of 1, 2, and 3, 2. So I'm going to do a rough graph sketch of that. And let's hope that I can be neater than I was last time. So I'm plotting the points 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3, 2. So I know, based on this, that my center is going to be the midway point. So that's going to be 2, 2. And based on that, so here's my center. My A would be the distance between these two, so A is going to be 1. I also know that my branches have to open east and west, left and right, so I know that my x has to be first. So I know it's going to be x minus 2 squared over a squared minus y minus 2 squared over b squared, and that's going to equal 1. Then I am going to look at the asymptotes, and both asymptotes have a slope of 1 or negative 1. So I know my slope is going to be, we'll just use a positive 1. In this case, to draw this box to make this the asymptotes, the B is going to be my rise. So the B over the A will give me my slope, because this is my A. It's 1. So A is 1, so B over 1 is equal to 1, which means B has to also equal 1. So my final is going to be x minus 2 squared over 1. I like to write it. I know you don't need it, but y minus 2 squared over 1 is equal to 1. And that's my final equation of the hyperbola. Okay, then I want to explain, because you did this quiz yesterday. We're just giving you the quiz again. Oh, no, I'm not there yet. Forget that. I just said that. All right, so here, it wants you to classify the graphs of the equation. Okay, so I wanted to go get this. This is what's in your book, and I'm just going to explain what this tells you. To identify conics, it comes in the standard form of ax squared plus bx plus cy squared. Up until this point, we have not had one that has this xy term, so you don't have a b. So you're looking at the coefficients of the two variables that are squared. And what you're going to do is once you identify those, you're going to look and see which of these patterns it fits. So looking at number 49, I have a 9, a positive 9, and I have a positive 4. They're both positive. So if I were to multiply 9 times 4, I would get 36. It's positive. So since it's positive, that means that the 36 is greater than 0, which means that they form an ellipse. So I'm going to say that they are an ellipse. You can go through all that, or you can just do it this way. So here I look at 51. I have 16. I'm going to highlight this. I have 16 for my x squared, and I have negative 9y squared. See how they have different variables? Different signs. So if I multiply 16 times a negative 9, I'm going to end up with a negative answer. That's just going to be negative. Since that's negative, that's really well. Since that's negative and I multiply them, there's going to be less than 0, which means that this shape is going to be a hyperbola. Skipping to 53, I have y squared, and I look and I look and I look, and I don't have another variable that's squared. I do not have another one that's squared. So if I only have one variable that's squared, we learned that a long time ago, that's a parabola. Wow, that's really thick. That's going to be a parabola. Or if you want to go the hard man way, you don't have an a because there's no x squared. You would have 0 times 1, and that's how you would get 0. But I just think it's easier to think if you only have one variable that's squared, it's a parabola. If you have two variables that's squared, it's either going to be an ellipse, circle, or hyperbola. If they both have the same sign, it's going to be an ellipse or a circle. If they have different signs, it's going to be a hyperbola. So I'm skipping down to 55. I have x squared and I have y squared. So they're both positive. So I know it's either going to be an ellipse or in a circle, but because they are the same coefficient, in other words, 1 and 1, since they are the same coefficient, that's going to be a circle. And if you remember, a circle is a type of ellipse. It's just has the same A, has the same B. Skipping to 57, I'm looking and I'm looking and I'm looking, and I see that I have x squared. I don't have a y squared, so I only have one variable that's squared. So I know that that is going to be a parabola. So those aren't hard. I would go and probably do 50 through 58 to just make sure I knew what I was doing. Those are very simple. So now let's go to the next thing I want to talk to you about, which is the quiz. So because the way Blackboard is, we cannot have you type in an equation. So we've given you ones like this before, and I'm not going to actually do this one, but we've given you ones like this, and we've said the center, and we give you a parenthesis, comma, parenthesis, and you realized that you put the numbers in for the center, the numbers in for the vertices. Those were very easy. Now, last time we assigned this a question that looks like this, and when you guys saw it the first time, which we've changed it, and we're just we're going to send it back out to you and have you guys redo it, and the higher of the two scores will count. When we sent it to you, we did not realize that you couldn't see the A, the D, the B, the C. So it probably made no sense. You just had a whole bunch of rectangles. So I'm not going to actually do this problem for you because that's one of the problems. But let's say you did all the work for this, and you ended up with, say, something that was like x minus 3 squared over, let's say, 16 minus, oh no, that's not squared, my bad. And then this was like y plus 3, oh, shouldn't have used 3, but I did, squared over 64 is equal to 1. So when you're doing this, the A and the D, so whatever variable's first and is positive, in this case it would be X, the X would go here. Then whatever variables would be behind the negative sign, that would go there. And that's what I mean by saying that for A and D, you are using letters, and then you're using either X or Y. And then for B, you put in B. So B in this case would be 3. And then for C, and it goes in alphabetic order, C would be 16. E would be -3. And F would be 64. And that would be how you would fill in. So be careful. Two things you have to be careful on. First of all, these go in alphabetic order, so you have to make sure that the B and the C are the right numbers that you're putting in there. And then for A and D, it's either going to be X or Y, depending on whether this one is going to be hyperbola that opens east and west. If it were to open north and south, then the Y would go first, the X would go second. So I hope that clarifies. So what we're going to do is we're going to send that quiz back out. We record your scores from yesterday. You'll get the higher of the 2 scores, and we just want you to try it again, and hopefully you'll have a better outcome. All right, well, I hope this helps. If you have any questions, remember that we are in the collaborative room, and you can come see us there, or you can shoot us an email. All right, have a great day. Thanks.